welcome back to another episode of The Hardcore Casual with your boy, Base the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's all appreciated. Yeah, a couple things have happened over the last 2 days. Definitely some stuff worth talking about. So, I guess without further ado, let's get into it. So I guess the first bit of major news that's taken place is the fact that Amanda Serrano has now vacated a WBC championship. Without going into the detailed explanation that she gave, I think it was on X at the time, but ultimately what she said is she wants to spend the remainder of her career creating history for women, and she wants to basically prove that, you know, women are just as capable as men fighting the 12 3-minute rounds, and all of her bouts moving forward are going to be at that level. And the fact that the WBC have categorically stated that they will not sanction those type of bouts, she sees no reason to continue to hold their belt or pay sanctioning fees towards them when, you know, they're basically trying to hamper progress, is essentially what she's saying. Now, in the argument itself, what I will say is I'm a bit in the middle. I'm not huge necessarily on the 3-minute rounds for certain divisions, I would say, purely because I think there's some divisions that are more stacked than others. So for the ones that are stacked, okay, it makes sense where there's not as much of a skill disparity between like the top and then sort of the level below, the level below, the level below that. But then there are some divisions whereby there's some elite fighters and then everyone else is basically trash. You got that one or two really good ones, and the mismatch, the gap between them, it feels like it could be detrimental. Now also, with that being said, you could say, well, playing devil's advocate, same thing could be applied to the men. Like, you've got elite level guys and then you've got, you know, basically the journeyman or the tin cans, if someone wants to put it that way, and say, well, there's a level of disparity there and they still get to box the 3 minutes. So there's that. But looking at it, you say, well, both sides are being awkward here. You've got the WBC, who, let's be honest, no one really rates or trusts their practices at the best of times, but they have this hardline stance of, we will never sanction 3-minute rounds for women. We know the science. It's irresponsible. Women can't compete at the same level as men. Blah, 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 blah. But then you've got Amanda saying that she will never fight 10 2-minutes again. She's only going to do the 12s, and they should have the right to choose. Now, I agree that women should have the right to choose whether they want to do the 12 3-minute rounds or not, but they should also have the right to refuse that if they don't want to do that. So in a scenario like that, if you're basically now saying anyone I fight has to fight me in 12 3 minutes, well, if they don't agree to that, what are you going to do? Get rid of the rest of your belts? Because ultimately, if you get rid of the rest of your belts, while you are one of the stars of the game, your marquee value drops very, very significantly if you have nothing to show that you're the woman of the division. Like, the name alone can't necessarily get you what you want, especially in the women's game where, again, it is still building. So you need to have that marquee. Now, if your next mandatory contender says, well, I don't want to fight 12 3s, I've fought my entire career at 10 2s, that's what I know, you're going to get rid of that belt as well. So while I agree on her stance that they should have the right to choose, and I think the WBC specifically are being difficult and, you know, for lack of a better word, just being arseholes about it. I also think that you can't necessarily just throw that same criteria on every single person that you fight. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. Now, the question, I think what it should be is, actually, it's hard. Like I said, it's very hard for me to actually decipher which way I feel about it. Like I said, I agree that she should have the right to choose that, and her opponent should also have the right to say, if we want to also do 12 3-minutes, there's absolutely no reason why you should now stop us from doing so. Like, that's sexist. It's I guess it's a breach of employment law to not be treated the same as others, although we all kind of know that employment law is very it is very fluid in some places. If you can put the right wording in a contract, it can basically be tailored specifically to your whim. But yeah, it's one of them ones. Like, I think if they want to fight the 12 threes, they should be allowed, and you should not be blocking them. But I also don't think you should impose that sanction on someone that they must fight the 12 threes if that's what they want. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, but ultimately she's relinquished that belt as they're the only one who won't sanction the 12 threes. And more than likely, I reckon it will be more detrimental to the WBC. If it's only that belt, it will be more detrimental to them, because in those weight classes, featherweight, between, I'd say, super bantam, super bantam, featherweight, possibly even super featherweight, she is the biggest name, and she will probably command the most money. So you're gonna lose a 3% of a fee from her, which will probably be a lot more significant than maybe 3% of a fee for someone like Skye Nicolson, or at this moment like Raven Chapman or Sarah Mahfood, or anyone else who's got a route to the WBC title. But with that being said, look, we'll wait and see kind of what happens with that moving forward. I agree with her giving up the belt because of their hardline stance, but I also think that she still has to be flexible to, I guess, to the needs of the current women's code. And if the rest of the women don't want to fight 12 threes, they shouldn't be forced to just to fight her. But if they're a mandatory, I guess they're going to have more leverage than if it's a voluntary. If she's offering them a chance, say, well, look, the chances at 12 threes, that's different than if they're a mandatory. If it's a mandatory, you can't stipulate it's going to be 12 threes. You have to, I guess that's got to be mutually agreed by the sanctioning body. But yeah, again, so just to reiterate, I agree with the principle of getting rid of that belt, because they're being very hard-nosed about it without any room for flexibility. But on the other side, she shouldn't also expect everyone to play to the same rules as she does. It should be, what do you want to do? I want to do 12 threes. Are you happy to do that? Yes, I am. Okay, let's do it. No, I'm not. Okay, let's negotiate. And then maybe even negotiate down to like 8 threes or something like that, or 12 twos, or some kind of compromise in the middle, and see basically how you sort of structure that and make it work. That's my opinion on it. Now, speaking on the actual situation, let's go to the other side of it, and let's talk about Skye Nicolson, who has obviously she was instated as mandatory. She was the interim WBC champion, so she was due to face Amanda Serrano. Now, Skye has recently gone on X and basically said that, for lack of a better phrase, without her actually saying it directly, that Amanda Serrano's running from her. Which is a bit ironic, because everyone says that all she does in the ring is run. But with that being said, look, I guess at this point it doesn't matter my opinion on what would happen in that fight, because now it's not going to happen as Amanda has vacated that WBC belt. However, what I will say, and anyone who's seen any of my recent videos ever since sort of maybe Skye's third fight, because her first 3 fights I was invested, I liked what I saw, but then I quickly stopped liking what I saw when there was no change. But what I will give Skye, and what I do rate, even if you could say it might have been clout chasing and she wasn't serious, I don't know, but she has been calling for the Serrano fight for about the last 6 months, 7 months, maybe even a bit longer than that. It could have possibly been from the start of the year. She was saying, look, that's who I want to fight moving forward. She's been consistent, and she's worked her way into that mandatory position. So win, lose or draw, I've got to rate her for sticking with what she said she was going to do. And bear in mind, even though Amanda's has been talking the whole 12 threes thing for a while, since the Katie Taylor fight back in April of last year, it wasn't a hardline stance. And even, you know, even when she was speaking it and not speaking it back then, you know, Skye Nicolson still said, that's the fight I want. I know I can beat her. I want the opportunity. And to her credit, she has worked her way up the ranks to get to that shot. So I've got no issue, even though I might not agree with her narrative and what she's basically said. I don't have an issue with her talking the way she's been talking and ultimately saying, look, I want the fight. I respect her, but I want the fight. I know I can beat her. And oh, look, she's given up the belt. Now she's avoiding me. I told you guys that she didn't want to fight me. Stylistically, there might have been some issues there for Amanda. I will say that. But yeah, on this one, I can be level-headed and I don't have to necessarily like someone's style or like them as a person or whatever to give an honest assessment of a situation. And in this situation, I can't say anything bad about Skye Nicolson. That she's gone the right way about things and she's stuck to her word. She stayed on the same path. She hasn't tried to swerve, deviate. She didn't call for Amanda to be stripped. She's basically said, I want my shot. I want my shot at you. I want my shot at the belt. And now the belt's vacant. She's also, from what I've seen on X, I have to give her credit for this as well. She said, I don't want to be elevated to the champion. I want to fight for the title. So her against the silver champion of the WBC, Sarah Mafuda, now have been ordered into a purse bid, which has to be it has to be agreed before it has to be agreed by the 12th of January, my birthday. Up until that point, they can negotiate. If they haven't got a negotiation by that time, then it will go to purse bid. Now, Sarah Mafuda has actually got a fight scheduled for January. I think it might be the 13th. If it's not, it could potentially be the 27th, which is actually not bad, because if it doesn't get agreed prior to that, you go to purse bid, you get 90 days to do the fight after that, or maybe you might stretch it to like 100 days. But at that point, it's it kind of works in your favor because she's now had a fight and she's going to be fresh for the next one. Or well, when I say fresh, I mean in terms of no ring rust, nothing to have to shake off, provided there's no injuries. She could, it could really benefit her and keep her very, very sharp. So it would be an interesting fight between the two. When it does sort of get announced, we'll sort of talk more about it. I've definitely got my ideas of who wins and how that fight goes. But yeah, in this one, I just want to say, for all the critiques that I've had of Skye Nicolson recently, I do rate and support the way she's gone about this one, whether or not I agree with her about Amanda ducking, or whether I thought that she would or she wouldn't win that fight. So yeah, that's my take on that. And last but not least, I've got to address some of the comments that came from Deontay Wilder, I think on the Last Stand podcast. And I haven't listened to it. I don't have an hour spare to listen to it, but I've seen some of the quotes where the first of one essentially was him saying that Eddie Hearn ultimately doesn't want that fight for Anthony Joshua. Joshua's the only marketable fighter he has, the only sort of cash cow he has, and he doesn't want that to be ended at the hands of me. And then he also said something along the lines of, some champions are created and some champions are born, or he said some are, I think, created, manufactured, and some are born. He said Anthony Joshua's a manufactured champion. Like, if you know, they bought certain things for him. They make him seem like he's this big star when really all they do is they buy all of his tickets and then put them on the resale market, to make it say, oh yeah, it's a sold out event and blah, blah, blah. So, okay, first couple things on that. Let's look at the first part. So Eddie Hearn doesn't want him to fight Wilder. Now, look, you guys all know my position on this, but for sake of argument, I'm going to look at it from the other side. There is an argument at this stage to say maybe Eddie Hearn has been avoiding that fight of recent years because there is an express danger to Anthony Joshua, especially in this quote-unquote current form of Joshua, where he wants to box and move more. He wants to be this defensive wizard. He doesn't have a stable training set up. He's always sort of moving from person to person, and the value could be dropping. There is an argument which to say, well, boy, maybe now isn't the right time. Maybe we need to wait for him to get another title, maybe have one or two defenses, and then finally cash it out when it's going to be a bigger fight, maybe than it currently is. Because let's be honest, the time to do the fight is when both guys were undefeated champions to make the undisputed. It's never going to be as big as it was in that moment, even though you could arguably say Deontay Wilder's profile is a little bit bigger now than it was back when he was a champion, potentially. But in that same vein, Anthony Joshua's profile isn't as high. So it kind of, I guess it puts them more on an even keel, but there's probably less eyes on it just because, again, the sum of the luster was the champions. It's all for all the marbles. It's UK versus America. It's undisputed. It's undefeated versus undefeated. Someone's always got to go. That's always a very, very intriguing fight, and a fight that the casuals can latch onto. You know, both guys at this stage essentially have 3 losses on the record. Deontay Wilder, you know, he lost 3 times to Tyson Fury, if we're going to be honest. And then obviously Anthony Joshua lost twice to Usyk and once to Andy Ruiz. So yeah, while it is still a massive fight, it's not as big as it was then. But maybe if there's a title on the line, you know, it can be a bigger fight. So maybe Eddie Hearn is looking strategically on that front. And you know, there are maybe some signs where you could say that is possibly the case, but then also you have to look at history and you have to look at facts. The facts were both guys were offered money, true value, by skills challenge. They accepted. The fight was due to take place, but the money never materialized, so the fight then had to be renegotiated and rescheduled with potentially different parties. Like, this is something that is in the public domain. We've all seen it. Now you've got the General Sports Authority, or the General Entertainment Authority, sorry, in you know, Saudi Arabia, saying, well, look, we're going to now take it on instead of skills challenge, but in order for us to do it, we had a limited time window, so we're going to put you guys together against these opponents, and then as soon as you guys have done that, then we'll look to make your big fight next year. Which a lot of people thought it was going to be next year anyway, but the fact that they're both on the same card means that all roads are kind of leading to get to each other. So in that sense, you say, you know, Deontay Wilder, he might have a point, but also there's enough evidence to suggest that it's not factual. It's just an opinion which maybe is shared by some others. Now let's talk about the manufactured and the you know, and the born champions. Well, I don't think you can call Anthony Joshua manufactured with the career that you have. I mean, look, let's look at it. They both actually went to the Olympics or started boxing at the same age, which was 19. Deontay Wilder obviously was at the Olympics the cycle before Anthony Joshua, but they both started boxing at the age of 19. They both went to the Olympics, so they both had the same opportunities there. One of them won gold medal, one of them won bronze. Now, whether or not you believe Anthony Joshua should have actually got to that gold medal, irrelevant. Whether you think that Deontay Wilder should have got to the bronze, irrelevant. So they both had that trajectory. Moving from there, you had Deontay Wilder fighting basically in club fights for the next 4 to 5 years, just off the strength up until the next Olympic cycle came through, fighting nondescript opponents, blown up cruiserweights and blown up light heavyweights. No, there wasn't any real heavyweights, no one that could quote unquote punch, no one with any real sort of note up until maybe when the Malik Scott fight happened. It was the first time you would have said he was in there with a, you know, a decent level operator. You had like Liakovic, who obviously was handy about 6-7 years earlier, kind of thing. He was a husk of a husk at the time. But you go to your 33rd fight, that's where you end up getting your world title. Okay, Anthony Joshua gets his world title in his 16th. No, sorry, it was his 16th, because he was 14-0 against Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte was 15-0, I believe. Either way, you give 14, 15, doesn't matter. But the point is, 16. It was definitely 16th fight for Joshua when he fought Charles Martin. 17th fight, because he was 16-0 after that. Yeah, so it was his 15th fight for. Cool. You guys get what I'm saying. Anyway, moving that one along. So you've got, okay, you could say, well, they paid the money for the champion to come over. That's his fault. I mean, is it Anthony Joshua's fault that Al Heyman and the PBC didn't see enough in you to put up the money for you to fight Charles Martin? Is it his fault that they didn't see the value to put up the money for you to stop Joseph Parker from coming to the UK against, at this time, the now succinct cash cow of the heavyweight division? That's not his fault. You might say he had the opportunities, but guess what? He still had to get in the ring. He still had to win those fights. And Anthony Joshua has beaten more unbeaten opponents than you have. He's faced more rated and recognized top 10 opponents within the Ring magazine, the TR boxing, the Transnational Boxing Association, their rank standings. In order the divisional rank standings, there's a lot more top 10 victories from him, consensus top 10, than there are on your record. People said that you had your first step up fight against Luis Ortiz, which was what, your 38th fight, I think it was. So when you look at all of this, or you look at this scenario, you can't be acting like, oh, well, he was handed everything. Well, no, he wasn't. Yes, he might have had money behind him, but that's not his fault that your team didn't believe in you enough to get you the relevant fights. And when you then say, well, look, when you properly step up to that level, Tyson Fury basically did something to you that he's never been able to do to anyone else. Walk you down, bully you, and beat you up, like, as the big guy. He didn't even do that to Dillian. He couldn't even do that to Derek Chisora. He was on the back foot fighting those guys. He fought you on the front foot, pushing forward. Why is that? He didn't even really do that with what's his name, Steve Cunningham. To a degree, he had to start towards the back end of it, but he didn't do that with Otto Wallin. He didn't even do that with Tom Schwartz. But all of a sudden, he does it to you. But yet you're the creme de la creme. Now, look, yeah, you dropped him a few times. Cool, we get all of that. But I just find it funny that if you said that, oh, no one ever gave me the chance, and as soon as I got the chance, I done the thing, that's how I'm a true champion, then maybe that would hold weight if that's how your career panned out. But it didn't, because that's not your career. The fact is, your manager told people that you were a baby at 33-0 after winning a world champion, and you still need, he still needs more development fights. After 33 fights as a pro, like, realistically, you should feel embarrassed about that. But you want to talk that Anthony Joshua is manufactured, or all they do is they buy his tickets and resell them. Well, guess what? If that's the case, a lot of places do that. I know that there's resellers in every walk of life. They're in America. I've seen the resales in America. They're a lot more egregious they are in the UK. But guess what? If they did resell a bunch of his tickets, for the most part, the majority of his fights are still either sold out or close to capacity. So ultimately, they just made double the money that they were selling the tickets for to start off with, because he's never fought in front of an empty arena. When you fought Robert Helenius, how many people was in the venue? I think it was less than 7,000. And the venue, I think it was held like 18 or 19,000 people. There was about 7,000 people in the venue. There's never been 7,000 in an Anthony Joshua fight. The ones I've been to have always been at least double that as a minimum. And when you go to the stadium fights, the majority of the time, the stadium, there's at least... I was at the Joseph Parker fight. Now, it wasn't sold out, but it was an 80,000 seater stadium. There was at least 76,000 people in there. I know that for a fact, because I looked around. There was very, very few empty seats. So, yeah, like, when it comes to the two of you, you're not comparable. Okay, maybe he had some financial backings that you didn't have, but you had loads of opportunities that you skirted and you swerved. And if we're going back to the whole Anthony Joshua thing, ultimately, you've made them one offer. They made you about 5 or 6, and you turned them down. And there's still the interviews out there of you saying that you lost your pen. That motherfucker gone. That was what you said. You don't need to fight him. You're the one with the most prestigious belt, the WBC belt. That's the only belt you need. That's what you said. To now want to come back and talk about, oh, I'm the king of the division, I want to unify again. Still talking the same old shit. And the worst thing is, you talking all this stuff about Anthony Joshua on the Last Stand podcast, but when you was in front of man, it's nothing but love, brother. I wish the best for you. I want the best for you. Blah blah blah. Even if we don't fight, I hope you do. But even if we don't, blah blah blah. But then when you go away, all of a sudden now you got mouth. Like, that's why you can't respect certain people. Like, where's the energy in front? I could understand if you don't say nothing. Goes, look, he knows what I'm about. He knows what my thoughts are. I ain't really got to say them here and now. Or I'm gonna be respectful to Saudi. I ain't really gonna say him right now. But he knows what my energy is. If you say that, cool. You ain't really got to talk the trash. But you know, or even just don't say anything. Yeah, no comment towards him. I'm not interested in him. I've got Joseph Parker to focus on. Cool. That's different to, oh, it's all love when you see me, but now when you're away, now you want to talk shit. Like, you can't respect people like that. I don't. I hope you guys don't. I'm not like that. You know how many people that I've spoken and I've talked some shit about on this, you know, this channel or other channels. When I go and see them in person, I ain't all hailing them up or trying to get a selfie or try to talk to them. You know, I'll stay in my lane. If they approach me, which has happened a couple of times, I have a conversation. Yeah, I said this, blah blah blah, you know, but I ain't gonna, you know, I'm not openly going over to them to try and make conversation. I stay in my lane and I keep quiet. I've got nothing. If I ain't really got anything positive to say about you, why am I going over to you for? And even, you know, when I go on undefeated, they know I'm not going to interview certain people or put myself in certain situations unless I have to, because I don't like those people, or there's certain things I don't like and I can't be fake in front of them. So I'm not going to try and get an interview when I don't really rate what they're doing. People know that about me. So yeah, I hope, anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Probably gone on more than I wanted to, but ultimately I feel like you guys kind of get the gist of where I'm getting with this one. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think ultimately. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Football should be on shortly, so yeah, definitely enjoy that. For right now, it's the Hardcore Casual out.